Hey guys, welcome to the Thriving Man podcast. This episode is a special bonus episode that we wanted to provide you guys this month. We're interviewing Allen Chapin, who's a great author, and Allen wrote a book that I think really fits with what we're covering this month. It's called Listen, and it's about hearing the voice of God. And what happened was Allen went on this journey for a year of every day listening to what God spoke to him. And the book came out of that journey. And so in this interview, we talk about that. We talk about the men who influenced Allen. We talk about different aspects of his life and where he's grown as a man. And I think it's a fascinating interview. We wanted to offer it as just a bonus for this month. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope it encourages you.
This is the Thriving Man Podcast with David and Reese Maxwell. These weekly shows are designed to help you remove the confusion from your life and make real progress with your growth. No matter where you are or where you're going, we're here to help you live a life you can be proud of. So welcome to the Thriving Man Podcast.
All right, Allen, welcome to the Thriving Man Podcast. So glad to have you on here today.
Thanks so much, David. Appreciate it. I'm excited to be on here with you. Let's do this.
Yeah. One of the things I want to do is I want to start out talking about the people who helped you, because I think it's important for us as men to realize that none of us are an island. We needed people. And one of the lines in your book that I really liked, you talked about how God brought each of these men into my life during different seasons to teach me something I would need down the road. So give us a little bit of the men who impacted your life, the season they brought you in, just to help you be the man you are today.
Yeah, no, that's great. There's a list. I mean, it takes a village to raise a child, right? And it took a village for me, a village of men, and super blessed. Had an incredible, godly dad. I know so many people do not have that. There's times I feel like, wow, I was born with a spiritual silver spoon in my mouth because I had such a great dad to pour into me. Not perfect. We didn't always get along, all those kind of things, but incredible man of character, honor, integrity, that just always exemplified that. Was at home, who he was in public. There was no deviance. I might not have always agreed with his positions, but he wasn't changing. He was rock solid. And so grew up with that. And then, and I'll kind of backtrack to one or two, but then on the other side of it, married Angela, and her dad ended up becoming my best friend outside of Angela and the Lord, just because, again, all that incredible integrity, character, honor, solid, just dependable, just steady. So many fishing trips when I'm frustrated out of my mind, and he's going, okay, easy, just fish and we'll talk, and set me straight and get all that stuff. Man, my youth pastor, there was a moment when a few years when I'd backslid and I come back to the Lord, and he really poured into me and discipled me and got me back on a track. And that was amazing. At college, dorm pastor Tom Hill, there at SAGU, and took a chance on me when I was, disappointed. I had not gotten elected student body president or something, all this stuff. And he says, hey, why don't you be a resident assistant with me? And then for that next year, he's just pouring into my life. And really lessons that I still to this day use in ministry and in life. And, during my time there, interned with a guy named Don Wee, and he happens to be one of the executives now over here in South Texas Assemblies of God. But Don, this summer that I spent interning with them was so impactful that still to this day, even where we're at in ministry right now, it was because I had contacted Don and said, of anything? He goes, no, I don't know of anything, and 3 days later, he goes, hey, I got an email. I really feel like you should check this out. Well, a lot of people could tell you that, but Don had invested enough in my life that when he said it, I did it, because I knew who he was. And if he said then I felt like, hey, this guy knows my life. He knows who I am, and I know who he is. And so anyway, and then man, got to serve with some incredible leaders over the year. Doug Fullenwider, Rob Blakey, those guys poured into me when I was serving as district youth director there in Louisiana. And they, again, people of incredible, impeccable character and honor and integrity, and just amazing leadership, and loved people, loved people. They could have been distant, but they chose to be relational,
Mm.
and just loved that element. And while I was working there, like a Jonathan David friend. Jonathan was older than David. Um, some scholars say considerably older. So
Wow.
odd that they would be friends. But Hudson Goza, and I think you know Hut.
Hmm.
But Hudson and I became friends. He's not tons older than me. He's just a little bit older. But anyway, but he really poured into my life during some very challenging seasons
Yeah.
as well. And so, man, I got this whole list of people. I look at it and go, if you see a turtle on a fence post, he didn't get there by himself.
Well, what has that done for you to kind of change your thinking to where you want to be that guy to others? Has that helped you really have a heart to mentor other young men and kind of help them on their journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, with my dad and Angela's dad, made me want to be that kind of dad, like that
Hmm.
my kids would grow up going, hey, what you see of our dad everywhere is what we have at home.
Yeah.
And that consistency. And I even tell them, you don't always have to agree with me. Okay, but let's just know that it's always going to be this way.
Yeah.
And so I think that's helped. But then, man, even here in pastoring, young guys that are giving their lives to the Lord, and they're getting started on their journey, and it's so fun because they're not perfect. There's no like qualification goes, oh, when you get to this level, I'll mentor you.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like I'll take you in your junk and let's go. Come on, we'll make a
Yeah.
journey of this. And just being able to pour, and times when I don't even know that I am, and
Yeah.
then they'll come back and say, "Man, thanks for pouring into me." I was like, "When did I do that?" You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and so that's and my probably some of that comes from my father-in-law, because one time I wanted to sit down and have an interview with him like this and say, explain to me, because you mentored so many great youth pastors, talk to me about how a pastor mentors a youth pastor. And he goes, what are you talking about? And I was like, I was like, you've mentored, so he goes, no, I haven't. I was like, yeah, you have. There's a ton of people out there in ministry doing amazing stuff because they served with you, and now they had these
Yeah.
other. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, how did you spend time with them and stuff? He's like, well, we just sat down and have staff meeting every week. And, I said, we got to go visit somebody in the hospital. Get in the van. Let's go. He said, we talked while we went. Hey, we got to work on
Yeah.
the air conditioner today. Come help me. And he'd say, we talk about what's going on in their life. I'm like, that's mentoring, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so anyway, but I probably have some of that, where I go, I don't know that I'm mentoring. I'm just loving people and trying to do the best that I
Yeah.
can to help them make the journey too.
I think a lot of times we think of mentorship as a formal coaching type program, and it's really just, hey, we're side by side doing life together, we can talk. And I think most men receive it better that way rather than a
Yeah.
formal, class or things like that.
I'm telling you, the guys at our church, we have a lot of work projects, and it's
Yeah.
amazing how many conversations and things happen while we're fixing something at a widow's house or something,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
somebody opens up and starts talking about what's going on in their life while we're swinging a hammer or slinging paintbrushes or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of men, that's how they prefer it. Well, give me for a moment, what are in your life as you look back to get where you are today, what were the most significant growth moments for you as a man? Just those things to
Yeah.
where you're like, okay, I need to step up. Either you were challenged or you saw a deficiency. What were some of those key ones for you that kind of brought you where you are today?
Man, I think probably some of the biggest were when I was away from the Lord, was challenged to come back to Him. And I had a youth pastor who took me to a setting where somebody from out of town was coming to speak to just a small group of students and leaders and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
it was hardcore, in your face kind of challenge, got my
Yeah.
attention, and it was like, man, I'm messed up. I got to get this straight.
Mm.
And but then that youth pastor loved me back in the process, and that
Mm.
really became kind of a turning point to me, and the call to ministry, all those things. Getting married was a wake up call for me as a man.
Yeah.
I remember on our honeymoon, second day of our honeymoon, we had driven partway the first night. We were driving the whole way and going to the Smokies anyway. But we got partway, and I was having to follow directions Angela's dad had given us. There was no GPS back then, right?
Oh
I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
you got a map and instructions, and you went.
Yep.
And 700 miles on this trip, right? And I remember coming to a city and thinking, I've got to get through this city and on the right road. And her dad knows how to do this because he's done it a bunch of times, but I don't. And all of a sudden it hit me. She's going to expect me to take care of her like he has taken care of her. I got so scared, bro. I was like,
Wow.
oh, I'm 24. I don't know what to do. I'm like,
Yeah.
and it was this challenge, I mean, that was a moment where, and it's been amazing, but it's, made me be a man more, to go,
Wow.
hey, step up and lead your family. And then, we couldn't have kids. We, had some infertility issues, and
Hmm.
we'd been married 12 years when we finally, uh, miraculously had Alex. And
Yeah.
I when he was born, that moment when he was born, and I was holding him for the first time, I thought, oh man,
Hmm.
like this is a whole new level of responsibility. And then as
Yeah.
they've gotten older, it's been like when they imitate me doing something, and
Mm.
or somebody goes, man, your son is just like you, and I
Yeah.
go, oh, oh man, no, 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 no. I gotta get this right. I gotta get this right. Dear God, you gotta
Yeah.
help me get this right,
Yeah.
and it's just like, ah. And so incredible moments like that, incredible graduating college was, it was an awesome moment of success. I mean, I think as men, we
Yeah.
want to succeed.
Yep.
Publishing my first book, like when that
Hmm.
happened, I had that dream since I was a teenager,
Yeah.
15, and then walked away from the Lord and all that kind of stuff, and condemnation and all these reasons why I couldn't over the years. And finally, and I think I was 37 or 38 or something. No, I take it back, 47 before I got it. I got that first book out there. But when I did, it was like a piece of me that was supposed to be there was now there.
Mm.
Stuff that I'd hidden away now, and something about that success of that, just getting it done. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter if
Yeah.
anybody bought it. If my mom was the only one who bought it, it wouldn't have mattered at that point.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
completing the task, being successful. And as men, like there's that thing in us, like I gotta succeed.
That's good.
And so, and I may have some of that more than others sometimes, where I feel like, not that I'm so driven, but sometimes I feel like I can't. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so then to be able to do it, you go, wait, I can't.
Yeah.
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 So, and those are moments that make. But I'll say this too, because no, like everybody'd rather see your scars than your stars, right?
Hmm.
Um, and being let go from jobs, heartbreaking moments like that. That's made me who I am. When my father-in-law, who was my best friend, died, and 8 months later my dad died, those
Mm.
two giants that I was talking about earlier, who
Yeah.
formed me, essentially, they had the greatest, biggest, longest impact in my life.
Yeah.
When they were suddenly gone, and
Mm.
I was coming into a season where I thought I was going to depend on them more than ever, that shaped me as a man too. And I
Mm.
remember having a guy here in the church tell me, Pastor, maybe it's okay that they're gone.
Mm.
Maybe it's okay that you can't lean on them. Maybe the Lord wanted you to lean on Him more in this season than on
Wow.
them. And I was
Yeah.
like, thank God for a man who would come alongside in that moment when my giants are gone
Yeah.
and go, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna make it. God's
Mm.
gonna help you. So pretty cool, man. So you got those moments. You got great moments in life that you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's awesome, and that makes you. And then there's crushing moments that you just
Yeah.
go, how am I ever gonna survive this? And that makes us.
No, I love that because I think you hit all sides. Some things are forced upon us that, or we move into and we unknowingly know that's how, like, getting married, having kids, those things kind of push upon us a maturity level. But then there's also those mountains we want to climb where, hey, I want to conquer this part of my life. I want to overcome this
Yeah.
area. And we know in order to do that, I have to be a better man. And there's that
Yep.
fear of, can I do it? But then when you get it done, you feel like $1,000,000. You feel like Superman in those moments.
Right.
And I think that's a natural God given thing we have, which is why most men are driven in some aspect or another. Not that we're all type A driven personalities, but we all
Right.
want to overcome. We all want to overcome and win the day, be a success. We call it living a life we can be proud of. Every man
Yeah.
has a different life, but they want to be proud of their life. They want to feel like I gave my best in that.
Absolutely.
So, okay, I want to talk about one of your books mainly for this interview because I think we're emphasizing for men the spiritual side this month. We're talking about developing that spiritual side with the Lord. And you wrote a book called Listen, and it came out of a very interesting story, which you talk about in the book. It's fascinating. So, share a little bit of where the motivation came and what you did to kind of bring this book about.
Oh my goodness. It was never intended to be a book
Yeah.
initially. I was coming through that season, Angela's dad dying, my dad dying. We had to leave a ministry position that we loved, and for 2.5 years, no door opening, and
Mm,
thinking, God, where are you? What's going on?
yeah.
And then suddenly the Lord opening multiple doors, having to figure out where are we supposed to go, what are we supposed to do, and in the midst of all that, that's when her dad died, my dad died, and so we make this transition to a new role, and the world's just topsy turvy. In the midst of
Mhm.
all of that, the Lord one day, and I've had consistent time alone with the Lord. It's not like I
Mhm.
didn't. It's not like I didn't ever talk to the Lord. It's
Yeah.
not like I didn't listen to the Lord. Any of those things did. But one day in my time alone with the Lord said, I felt like He said to me, and obviously not audibly. I don't know how He speaks to everybody else, but to me, in my heart,
Mhm.
my mind, my spirit, He just said, for the next 365 days, before you do anything, first thing in the morning, when you wake up, before you read anything, even my word, even before that, I want you to listen for my spirit to speak to you. And I
Mm.
thought, well, God will listen to you, and He's like 300, and I thought 365 days. This is a long quest, okay? And it's not 30 days. This is not whatever.
Yeah.
And so I was like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, I'll listen. And I thought, man, if the creator of the universe wants to talk to me, I'm gonna write it down. Apparently, I mean, he's got important stuff to say, so I guess
Yeah.
I'll write it down. So it's got one of those little Dollar Tree journals, just little thing, and started writing it. The next day I got it, and it wasn't long. It's like 3 or 4 sentences the first day. So well,
Mhm.
that's pretty cool. God spoke to me, and then I read my Bible and talked to Him some more about other stuff, worship Him and go on my day. Right, next day again, next day again, and I missed one day in the whole thing, and so I did another day at the end of the year to make up for it because we were gone out of town at a conference, and my son got sick and all that, and I was having to get up and go do
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
and I missed the day, and I was like, no, Anyway, but it was this whole year, but about a month or two in, I started going, wait a minute, if God wants to talk to me, why? What have I done wrong? Like, because
Mm.
there's kind of like I felt like I got called to the principal's office in some way, and I just didn't know what it was about. And so,
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
so ends up, no, that's not the case. An incredible year of God speaking to me every day, and it gets longer and longer and longer as the years going on because I'm giving Him more time. I'm paying closer attention, all
Mm.
of that. At the end of the year, as I'm coming to the end of that year, I was like, God, this is so good. Why have I never done this. I
Mm.
don't ever want to live without this. And I haven't. I'm, I'm telling you, haven't missed another day. I missed that one that year, but
Yeah.
I have not missed another day because it's been so life giving. I was just like, oh, I don't know how I would go a day without stopping and listening to him first.
Wow.
And then I can get into all the other things and even studying his word and talking with him about needs in my life. In fact, lots of times he'll already have talked to me about it before I ever have to bring it to him, or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. And so I just loved having that element in my walk with the Lord. But then out of that was, God, this is so good. I wish everybody had this.
Mm.
And and so at some point I just kind of felt like this release that it was okay to put this into some kind of accessible format, in this case a book,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
people could do it and take them on the 63-day journey. And that's Caroline Leaf. You have to get your brain science on and go after that one. But
Hmm.
really to give people, and then a place for them at the end of each one to write down for themselves what they felt like the Lord was saying, and show them this is what it sounds like when God speaks to you. If you're
Yeah.
unsure what that looks like, this is what it looks like. This is what it sounds like. This is how it feels. And then some little stories go along with it. But trying to put it in some kind of format where somebody could go, oh, that's what it was, and give then them go on that journey. Because here's what I
Yeah.
knew: if I could get people on that journey, they will stay on that journey. And
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and so anyway, but that's kind of how it all came about. And I was super pleased. That, again, I didn't ever intend for it to be. In fact, I had to hand pick out of those. There were some of those things I'm like, I'm not putting that in the book. That's very personal.
Yeah.
Not putting
Yeah.
that in there.
One of the things you mentioned, and I thought this was really good, and I want you to answer it. You say, uh, you talk to the reader and say, they're tempted to wonder, what if I'm just making all this up? How will I know it's really God speaking? Because I know for a lot of us, when we feel like God is speaking to us, we're kind of unsure. What if I blow it? What if I mess up? It's almost like our own imposter syndrome when it comes to our relationship with God. So, what did
Yeah.
you do to kind of overcome that to where, okay, I'm going to listen, write down what God speaks to me, and I'm going to believe it's really God speaking to me? What'd you do to balance that out for yourself?
Well, and there's part of this that is just absolutely faith.
Yeah.
Without faith, it's impossible to please God. At some point, because my wife asked me the same thing. She goes, "How?" She's like, "I want to do it. I'm going to do it too." When I was telling her about the book and everything,
Yeah.
and she's like, and I would tell her, I was like, "Man, it was so amazing with the Lord today." And she's like, "But how do you know that's God? Like, how
Mm.
do you?" And here we are, we're pitching in doing youth ministry again at the church, right? And have students ask me, but how do you know when God speaks to you? And I'm
Yeah.
like, man, you'll know. There is an authoritative sense to it, I guess, where you would go, well, that's God, okay?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is what I usually break it down to for people. I'm like, God's for us, not against us,
Hmm.
and he wants to do good for us. I think about my kids. How do I speak to them? Is it sometimes direct and straight? Yes. But is it in love? Yes.
Hmm.
Do I always explain what I'm telling them? No. Sometimes
Hmm.
I just tell them. Lots of times I do explain it. But they know this. Over years, I have invested enough love that they
Hmm.
understand if I ask them in the middle of something, can you just do this? They'll do it.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
they know they've learned when it's okay to mess with dad, when it's okay to have the conversation, when it's not, all that kind of stuff. But this is the way I've kind of broken it down for people, is to say, when the Lord speaks to us, it's full of love.
Yeah.
Love doesn't always mean good, like feel good. You
Yeah.
know, there's truth involved, and there's always truth,
That's good.
right? So it speaks the truth in love to us. It's never condemning. I tell people,
Mm.
we should feel guilt when we do wrong. That's a right thing. We should feel guilt. That's the Holy Spirit helping us get going in the right direction. If we start feeling condemned, like there's no hope, I can't overcome this, I've done too bad, that's the enemy. That's the
Yeah.
devil. He's lying to us. If he's talking, he's lying, right? And so he's if but when it's conviction, that is that there
Mm.
is hope. You did
Yeah.
wrong, but there's hope. But what I discovered most of the time in that journey was that because I thought, well, God's going to correct a bunch of stuff in me.
Yeah.
He wasn't. There were
Mm.
times when he would say, "Hey, be focused today. You have a
Yeah.
lot going on. Keep your focus." And it was encouragement
Mm.
and preparation and guidance. Hey, when
Yeah.
you go out there today, make sure this or that. Hey, people are watching. Make sure that you are living this.
Mm.
Things where you would where it wasn't bad, it wasn't correction even, and even in the times when it was correction, it was
Yeah.
so different. I thought I didn't know that's the way God corrected us.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't taking me out behind the woodshed and whooping me. I mean,
Yeah.
he's going, come here, sit down. We need to talk about this. This is not good.
Yeah.
Straight, and you can do it. And so I began to have this sense, I guess, having faith that it was God to begin with,
Yeah.
and just beginning to write down. But as I went on, I began to see patterns with him, and it was the buildup of going, I know when it's God now, and I know when it's not.
Mm.
And do I still have days when I go, was that God?
Yeah.
That seems weird. I don't know about that. And I would go to scripture and go, does that match the way that God dealt with people in scripture? Because I want to make sure I was on track, that I
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
getting off. And I would go, okay, that's in line with his character and nature.
Mm.
I think I can trust that that's him,
Yeah.
and go from there. And so, there's for me, I guess in some ways you go, it's ethereal. Like, how do you, it's like nailing jello to a tree, right? Can you do
Yeah.
it? I
Yeah.
don't know. And yet there is a sense where you know. And what's interesting
Mm.
about that is I just read this recently. You've probably talked about it a million times. You probably know this way better than I do. But uh, often multiple people would put their herds together to when they penned them at night in first century Palestine and Israel there,
Yeah.
and so as in the morning when each shepherd would come, they would open the gate. They would call their sheep by name,
Yeah.
and the sheep, their sheep would come out because the other sheep didn't recognize their voice, didn't hear their
Wow.
name by their
Yeah.
shepherd. And so they would stay in the pen until their shepherd came and spoke to them and told them to come out and
That's
do
cool.
that. And so when Jesus said, my sheep know my voice,
Mm-hmm.
all those in that area who understood the agrarian nature of things, farming and ranching, would have said, "Oh yeah, I get it." The shepherd in the
Yeah.
morning would think, "Yeah," and they just knew. And so there's
Mm.
a just knowing element that comes to it too, when people will go, that's God. Now, does the devil
Yeah.
try to mess us and lie to us and do stuff? Yeah, but the longer you listen to the Lord, the more obvious his lies become.
That's interesting, and I love the part you brought up about it. Seems like you gained a bigger understanding of God's love through this. What does His love
Yeah,
look like? What does it mean for me? Because I think a lot of men struggle with, how do I know God really loves me? It seems like He loves everyone else, but He probably doesn't like me. So, did you struggle with some of that as far as that feeling like, okay, God doesn't really love me. He just has to accept me because he's God, but he doesn't really like me. Did you go through some of that?
yeah, yeah. And I think even at that part where I was talking about, where I go, the other shoe's going to drop at some moment.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's going to, there's going to be a place where he's gonna butter me up, and then he's gonna fillet me.
Mm,
He's gonna slay me, and like he's gonna tell me everything that's wrong, and then I have to go through this process of trying to figure out how to get it all right and all that kind of
yeah.
stuff, and it just never came.
Mm,
And so then you start wondering, well, then what's he up to? Why would God want to talk to me? And because the truth is, we look at we go, okay, if he's God, and he is, but we all, I think, come to those places where we go, okay, if he's God,
Mm.
and if God is this way,
Yeah.
if he's so loving and he's so compassionate and he's so wise and he's so this, and I'm not, why
Mm.
would he ever want to hang out with me? It's funny. A book we'll talk about it later, but another book. I tell the story. It's obvious that I would marry Angela. Okay,
Hmm.
she's beautiful, she's smart, she's talented, she's funny, she's got every right, the whole package. She's got the whole deal. Of course, I married her, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But why did she marry me, right?
Yeah. Her
And funny people
momentary
ask that.
lapse of judgment.
Literally, when we got engaged, she told her dorm pastor, we were at college, and she told her dorm pastor, she's like, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this RA thing this next semester. I've got engaged and we're going to be planning a wedding and all that. And she goes, who'd you get engaged to? Like, we've been dating, okay? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
she goes, she said, Allen Chapin. And the woman literally laughed at her. And she
No.
was like, no, you didn't. Shut up. Who'd you get engaged to? You know, like, that it was that obvious, okay? And so that same, you go, well, why would Angela marry you?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that I understand that, but she loved me anyway, and she
Yeah.
married me anyway, and you know, grace doesn't make a lick of sense. I was talking
Mm.
yesterday in the service, and I was like, nobody touched Jesus unless he let them, and he let the woman with the issue of blood touch him. She had
Hmm.
faith. He said, daughter, you've been healed. Your faith has made you well, right? She came in faith, and so he let her touch him. The woman who poured the perfume on his feet and wept and wiped his feet with her hair, he let her touch him. She came in worship. And those two make sense to me. But he
Hmm.
also let Thomas touch him in doubt.
Mm.
When
Wow.
Thomas was struggling to handle and receive and understand, and everybody else was getting it, and everybody else had experienced it, and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
Thomas couldn't. He goes, "No way! I'm not going to believe it until I can touch the holes in his nail holes in his hands, put my hand in the spear hole in his side." And
Yeah.
he goes, it's cool, Thomas. I got you. I know. Here you go." And he let him
Mm.
touch him. I mean, it doesn't make sense. That's not
Yeah.
right. That's not fair. That's not. But that's who God is. He
Yeah.
lets us. And so yeah, I struggled with that. But when I finally understood, he really does love me. He's really trying to help me. He really does have my best interest at heart. He really is working all things together for my good. If I'll get out of the way and let him, you know, I'll,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
he's doing that. If I'll get on board with his plan, things are going to go a lot smoother. If I won't fight against it, and I was like, what? Why? And which even makes it more special
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then when you finally accept that this doesn't make sense. There's no reason why he should do this. You go,
Hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
Eureka,
Yeah.
touchdown. That's who God is.
Yeah.
And that realization for me was like
Mm.
just
Wow.
which made it that much more special. So then it's like I'm never missing another day of this ever again. And as long as I live, if
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just want to get to know him better and let him tell me and get me to where I need to be. And so we're going to be doing this for eternity,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. That's really good. That's really good because I like the way you describe it as you just gained a greater understanding of him and kind of his nature and the way he is. And I think that helped you understand scripture better, reading the
Oh,
Bible,
yeah.
getting all that. Um, one of the things that you talked about that I thought was really good, you said this line, God has called you to be unique for him while carrying his DNA, his character, and his nature into this world, representing him with your own flair. And I love that juxtaposition of yes, we are to act like God, we're to have his character, but we're all different. And the flair in which we do it is different. Expand that a little bit of how God showed you that you don't have to be the same as someone else. You can be unique
Yeah.
for him because he's called you to be that. Talk about that.
I'll give you, this is the simplest illustration that I can give to people uh, when they ask something like this, because the truth is, if you ask me, tell me about your favorite preaching, Alan. Okay, so I'm a preacher, right? And tell me about your favorite preaching. I would probably 1960s camp meeting. Well, that's God. Let me tell you how it's
Yeah.
going to be. I said, He is the Father, and He is the Son, and He is the Holy. I mean, like that. Okay, so
Yeah.
I just did it, right? I just did it right there. I don't preach that way. I always wanted
Hmm.
to. I want to be hellfire and brimstone. I want to drag you to the pit of hell and tell you how bad it's going to be, and so that you'll repent and get right and all that.
Yeah.
And it's just so insincere to who I am. And
Mm.
finally, the Lord helped me to see it. And He goes, I mean, I always wanted that deep, booming voice that could carry, and
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
worked with I'm full like, yeah, you get preaching, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
and sir, and all these guys
Yeah.
that are legends, and I got Mickey Mouse
Yeah.
over here going, hey, and just, and the craziness and I've had kids come up to me after youth services and things, and they're speaking. They're like, "Hey, I'm ADD too. I totally understood everything you said."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, I'm not, but that's okay. Thank you. Thank you for following along. I appreciate that." And but once I just finally embraced it
Yeah.
and said, and it's hard because you think people have expectations of who you're supposed to be and all these things,
Hmm.
and I just thought, you know
Hmm.
what? I'm gonna be me.
Yeah.
God made me. He created me. I've had the experiences I've had, and they've brought me to this point, and I am who I am.
Yeah.
And when I do that, that's when people respond. They're like, "That was
Mm.
awesome," like I was just being an
Wow.
idiot, like
Yeah.
whether it's throwing stuff out into the audience or whatever it is that I'm doing
Yeah.
that's that is that thing, or it's I'm a storyteller. And
Hmm.
I do better than, and it's not that I don't ever read scripture while I'm preaching, but I do better to tell the story.
Yeah.
Tell him
Yeah.
this is where it's found. You can follow along, but let me
Yeah.
just explain what was happening here and tell them the story, and all that. And once I realized some of that, it was like I kind of became my own person when I realized I'm not the dad that everybody else is. But God
Mm.
chose to give me Alex and Austin to raise.
Hmm.
There's nobody on this earth who's more qualified to parent them to be their dad than me. Otherwise, he would have given them to somebody else. So I'm okay. It's okay for me to be me and
Hmm.
not have to try to be. And man, do we ever try to be somebody else? Like
Mm.
all the
Mm.
time. Hey, I wish I was as chill as you, bro. You're so awesome. I'm like, man, you're so full of wisdom, and like, it seems like nothing in life ruffles you, and I'm all like, ah, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just want to be like, I want to be like David, you know, and yeah, and how many times do we do that? And stupid social media, good grief. Oh, everybody does it this way. I gotta, everybody's driving this. I need to go drive that, whatever. And I'm like,
Yeah.
whatever. There's freedom for somebody today that's watching and listening. There's freedom for them to just quit being everybody else and be you. And don't worry
Yeah.
about that. Because when you're authentically you, that's when God shines through to me. He's like, I made this masterpiece. You're trying to paint over it and put other stuff on.
Yeah.
It'd be like somebody trying to paint over the Mona Lisa or something. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
everybody in there would go, "What are you doing? You're going to ruin it." And
Yeah.
yet we can't see
Yeah.
that in our own lives. Ephesians 2:10, you're God's masterpiece. Um, and so we're trying to paint over what he's done, and he's going, "You're spectacular. Like
Yeah.
just let that be, and let me hang you on the wall and let everybody look, because that's awesome."
No, I think that's good because I think a lot of men struggle with that to where, I want to try and be a real man. And in their mind, every person out there is a real man. I want to look like the rock. I want to have this or do that. That's what real men do when they are
Yeah,
real men. God made them the way they are. And
Exactly.
and that's interesting because I think for a lot of men, when they get to that point, they have a security that then helps them be able to thrive and help other men in a lot of ways because they're not trying to fill that insecurity themselves.
Man, you know, Dave, what's crazy too in our world with all this gender struggle, people trying to
Hmm.
figure out
Hmm.
all this. I think that plays in what you just said. I remember saying just recently we were having sort of we were talking about all sexuality, gender issues, all those things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, you can say I'm not a man all you want because I like to watch rom-coms with my wife. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't care if you laugh at me about that or not. I don't care if you laugh because I don't dress the way I don't carry an axe and wear flannel all the time, whatever. Okay,
Yeah.
you can say whatever you want, but I'm thoroughly 100% heterosexual and happily married for 28 years. Okay, so
Yeah.
whatever. I'm just telling you, I'm a man and I know I'm a man. And you're
Yeah.
not going to dissuade me from that. But our world has these definitions so in place that I think that's
Hmm.
what happens. Somebody goes, well, I can't be a man like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so what if you love to do this and you love to do that? And that's not what the world thinks of as a man. Last time I checked, the world didn't create gender. The world did not set the rules for gender. God
Yeah.
did all
Yeah.
that, and He made you. And since He made you, then you're okay. Like,
Yeah.
be a man and be a man the way you're supposed to be a man.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And that's the whole point. I think the unique part of where the book takes men is they learn how to listen for themselves to figure that what is my unique flair for the world? What is it that I can do that God's called me to do? And I can bring that to the world. So I think it's a great book. I recommend everybody getting it.
At the end of the year of listening, or whatever, the Lord said, I was like, Lord, this is so awesome. He goes, great. Because now for the next 365 days, I'm going to still speak to you for you, but I'm also going to speak to you for another person every day. And I want you to say to them whatever I tell you to say. And
Wow.
so, for the next 365 days after that, I spent not only listening for myself, but then for someone else, and then having to communicate to that. Find that. Sometimes I didn't even know them. Never heard their name before in my life. Have to hunt them down and tell them. Sometimes it was somebody I knew. Sometimes it was somebody in my family. Sometimes it was the church. It was whatever. But there'd be very specific every day. And but the only way I could do that for others was because I had done it for myself.
Hmm.
And I
That's
say that
good.
to men to say, listen, you're learning for you, but you're not just learning for you.
That's
You,
good.
you could be you could be learning to listen for someone else. God may give you an opportunity to speak in something into somebody else's life that He spoke into your life,
Yeah.
and hopefully at some point that I'll take out all the names and everything. But there's
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
amazing stories from that 365 days of speaking things into
Yeah.
people's life from God so that they would again know what His voice sounds like. Okay.
Now I know we're around Christmas time. You've got another book that just came out. Tell us about that one
Yeah.
too.
But the Christmas book,
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
excited. It's even got the author proof stripe over it, but it's called Do You Hear
Yeah.
What I Hear? And truths that the Lord wants to speak to us. So, like at Christmas time, every year I like to. I normally am just like reading through a book of the Bible at a time, and in my own
Yeah.
personal time alone with the Lord, I'm just studying, and it's very consistent and systematic, for me, and just letting God speak to me as He guides me and directs me through that. I'll be reading other books sometimes along with it, but at Christmas time, I like to take about a month, set everything that I've been doing aside, and
Hmm.
just circle back to Jesus coming and going, Lord, just one more time, reveal yourself to me. You came to reveal
Mm.
yourself to us. Just
Yeah.
one more time this year, Lord, remind me of how special it is that you came. And I'll go back through and read the gospel account and, all that of Jesus coming. But in this, seven people that from that first Christmas or whatever, but there's seven truths. I'll just give them to you real quick. they're this: you have been heard, you have found favor,
Mm.
you are on the team, you have something to offer, you matter, you have a mission and a message, and you have a reason to worship. And so each one of those has a few days, little kind of like just moments for us to
Yeah.
be able to dive into a particular person connected to that. And God was speaking that truth to them 2,000
Mm.
years ago. That truth is still truth for us today. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I hear God saying this. The question is, do you hear what I hear? And
Hmm.
so anyway, so I'm excited. It's only about 100 pages, 110 pages, something like that.
Yeah.
And so anybody can knock it out. It's designed to be 25 days or less. So if you started December 1st, you can catch it. Even if you didn't, you could knock this out because they're short. They're
Yeah.
not designed to take a lot because we don't have a lot of time at Christmas.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
designed to
That's
be
true.
simple, just simple punches of truth that remind us this is when Jesus came. This is what God was saying to us.
So where can people go to find your stuff and to learn more about you?
Yeah, super simple. AllenChapin.com, and so you can get all the books there. They're all on Amazon,
Okay.
and so you can get them there. And I did my first audiobook recently, and it's on
Nice.
Audible. So the
Okay.
one for the Bride Finder,
Yeah.
it is not only in print, but that's the first audiobook, and so I've been wanting to do that. AllenChapin.com and Amazon, you can just search my name and all the books will come up, all that good stuff.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And I'll put all those links in the show notes and take care of it. So, Alan, appreciate it. Thanks
Awesome.
for investing in the lives of the thriving men out there and appreciate it. And we hope to have you on again soon.
Hey, Dave, thanks so much for investing in my life. I love you. Appreciate our friendship. And I hope that all you guys are blessed, that you have a great, great Christmas season, and that you do thrive.
Thanks for listening to the Thriving Man Podcast. If you want to check out more resources from David and Reese, you can go to thrivingman.com. We'll see you in the next episode.